another episode of The Spirit of Creating. And in today's episode, I wanted to dive into thinking about our inner voice when we're creating art. And I think with our internal dialogue, no one else gets to hear it, only we hear it. And so in a way, we can be quite extreme with the way we speak to ourselves. Because if we had to say out loud what we maybe are saying to ourselves internally, I don't know if we would ever say it out loud because it would just feel too negative or judgmental or critical. So I'm talking about the negative inner voice we can have when we're about to do something we want to do and don't think we're good enough to do it just yet. And this internal voice obviously is silent to the outside world, but we can hear it and it can up its volume when we sit down to create, whether it's a piece of poetry we're writing or whether it's a painting we're about to sit down and embark on. That narration, that negative narration, can really up the ante and start being quite loud and obnoxious and prevent us really from putting that brush to canvas, because now we've got this chant going on inside which isn't conducive or supportive to the act of making art. It stands in the way of it. And the more we listen to that voice and obey it to a certain extent, the more we come across ideas and experiences of creative blocks, or we label ourselves as procrastinators or lazy or not creative enough. And what we're doing is creating an identity out of that negative dialogue and making it fit. So if I'm about to sit down to paint and I've got this voice telling me I'm not good enough, I don't know enough, I'm not ready yet, I need the next course or the next podcast to listen to first before I sit down to create, then I'm obeying and bowing down to that voice, and I'm corroding away at my own creativity. And we feed it and then we wonder why we can't create. But you would never, look at a child and want to support them in something they're doing and then just be shouting horrible negative remarks at them and expect them to want to participate in whatever we want them to participate in. We don't smash down people's dreams and ideals before they've even started, but yet we do that with ourselves. And because no one else can see or hear it, it's almost like it's not happening, even though it overtly is, because then we're just staring at a blank sheet and nothing's being made. And instead of us turning towards that negative voice and saying, it's you, that's not me that's creating this horrible diatribe about my work, it's this voice that I'm listening to. Instead, we kind of then take it on ourselves and judge and criticize ourselves even more for not being able to make the art we want to make. And my solution has been to let that voice play out, because I don't know about changing it or spending so much energy in trying to make it sound a bit better or saying nicer things instead of mean things. It's more about tuning out of that voice, because let's just pretend it's never going anywhere. Let's just pretend it's staying and it's always going to be on that channel and it's always going to be saying judgmental, critical commentary. Our focus doesn't need to be on that voice. That our focus needs to be on the art that we want to make. So when you sit down next to create, all you need to do is focus on what it is you want to make, allow that to come through, and focus your energies on that creative expression, knowing that that voice isn't telling you anything truthful. It's nothing new. They're not facts. It's all false, but it wants to have its say. And it's having its say, but we don't have to be tuned into it and obeying it and bowing down to it. It can play out like it does, and then we can carry on doing what we're meant to do. Just like sometimes you're going about your day and there's some roadworks outside and it's grinding and it's irritating, but the more you focus on those roadworks, the more everything else disappears, and it's always about the noise outside. Then we have to learn the skill of tuning in to what we want to focus on and tuning out of the voices or the ideas and beliefs that are corrosive to our creativity. So if you're finding when you sit down to make some art that you're not making art, and then you're blaming yourself for being lazy or being a procrastinator, that isn't the case at all. All you're doing and all you're guilty of is you're listening to that voice that's telling you all these unhelpful, unsupportive things about you that aren't even true, and then you're listening to it. And it's easy to do, it's hard to ignore, but the skill is, and slowly acquiring that skill is beneficial, because you can then expand your creativity and your creative focus, and that voice will then start becoming slightly less loud. And it doesn't really matter how loud it is, because you're just deciding not to listen to it anymore. You've made a choice. It's free will. It's your free will to decide that that isn't who you're listening to anymore. You're not being guided by that voice. It does nothing good for you. It doesn't give you the creative output that you want. It doesn't make you the artist you want to be. It stops you from doing all of the things you want to do. So it's time to stop listening to it completely. Let it play out if it wants to. Ignore it as best as you can, and focus in on what it is you want to be making and creating. So if you have any questions about corrosive creativity, if you have an experience of this, then it'd be great to talk more about it. You can email me at illustratingbrain@gmail.com, and I shall be back again next week with another episode.